Hello everybody, I'm Sam Hua from Shanghai. I'd like to introduce my new book, A Modern Exposition of Sun Tzu's Art of War to you. In this video, I will talk about the cost of war and also the cost of our business. The first thing about war is it's not about fighting, winning, or failing. It's about the cost. Just like today, maybe the US can win each war, but they can't afford the cost. In ancient times, the biggest cost of war was food. Sun Tzu said, each package of food taken from enemy equals 20 of our own. Why? Because of the cost of transportation. To transport food 500 kilometers over the plains to the troops takes 20 times the food. Why? Because there was no railway, only ox carts. And you also need to protect the convoys, or the enemy would rob you. So most of the food was to support them on the way. Only a 20th could be used on the front line. More than 2,000 years ago, there was one of the greatest emperors in the history of China, Han Wudi, maybe one of the top 5 in history. He was great because he won a lot of wars and made the area of China far greater. But when he launched a war against the southwest of China, because it was too far away and there were no roads, the transportation cost to deliver one package of food was 120 packages of food. Han Wudi governed China for 53 years in constant war. At the beginning of his reign, China was the richest country in history. The treasury was full and the granaries were full. But when he died, the whole country went broke. From the government to the people, the whole of China went broke. And the human population was half of what it was when he ascended the throne. Han Wudi made the country miserable. But nowadays, many Chinese people still regard him as one of the greatest emperors in history. As Victor Hugo said, the cannon fodder always reveres the guy who fired the cannon. The guy he was referring to in this case was Napoleon. Due to the transportation cost of war, the emperors could not support a war far from their homeland. But what about someone like Genghis Khan? How could his army conquer so far away? That is exactly a story of cost, the cost of food. The staples of Chinese were grains, but the staples of Mongolians are beef and mutton. The Mongol army marched over the Eurasian steppe with their cattle and sheep. Their food were living and gave birth to new food on the way. When the army need to move quickly, they need to drop their supplies and each soldier just carry his own food. A Chinese soldier could carry food for 3 days, but a Mongol could carry food for 2 weeks. They had their special dry beef. They just tear a piece off, add water, and then they had a high energy meal. So the success of Genghis Khan was not due to just fighting, but also no cost. He had a no budget army. Another famous historical figure in Europe, Napoleon, his victory was also a result of no budget war, the cost of a soldier's life. You know, tyrants are not afraid of war. because the life of their people is cheap. Civilized countries are afraid of war because nobody wants to die. That's the reason why Spengler, the famous German historian, said human history is a cycle of the uncivilized conquering the civilized and then being assimilated by the civilized. Before the French Revolution, war in Europe was between the kings and the nobles. Their soldiers are their private army or mercenaries, so they were really expensive. And if thousands of them were killed, then the kings or the nobles could not replenish them in a short time. But in the French Revolution in 1793, the French National Association issued a new law. It was the beginning of universal military service. A new era began, which is known as the People's War, not the King's War. Every citizen, including old people, women, and children, must join the war. So, Napoleon had almost unlimited sources of troops, but the other kings did not. That was really unfair. Napoleon felt so elated, he said, "Nowadays, the price of soldiers' lives in Europe is cheaper than dust." Now, we live in a commercial society. What can we learn from the art of war? The art of war is the art of low cost. You must find a no-budget way. We often talk about innovation, but as Peter F. Drucker, the U.S. author, said, all innovation is to reduce cost by more than 30%. I'd like to say innovation is equal to cost cutting, but cost cutting is not just about cutting the cost. It also means spending money wisely. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more in the upcoming videos.